Welcome to the first video. We're going to be talking about Hatchet this week. You'll notice behind me I got a new backdrop, temporary. I'm trying to set up a workspace upstairs so that I can get a little bit more efficient with the amount of work today, but we're making do with what we got. Let's talk about Hatchet in terms of just a profile of the novel, a little bit of background information. Gary Paulsen, the author of Hatchet, has written a tremendous amount of work, including hundreds of books, magazine articles, short stories, plays, most of which are written for a young audience. And many of them deal with themes of wilderness, survival, and nature. Paulsen has been the recipient of 3 Newbery Honors, one for Dog Song in 1986, one for Hatchet in 1988, and The Winter Room in 1990. Most of you probably have this edition of Hatchet. This is the current cover. You can see that sticker right there for the Newbery Honor. That means it was a runner-up that year for the Newbery Medal, which is the most prestigious award in the children's literature community given to an author. We will talk more about awards in a lecture coming up. But actually, Hatchet is the first book in a series about Brian Robeson's experiences in the wilderness. The other books in the series are The River, which was published in 1991, which almost takes like a branching alternative universe approach. The River is very different from his attempt to reboot the series with Brian's Winter in 1996, Brian's Return in 1999, and Brian's Hunt in 2003. So The River is a sequel, and then the Brian's trilogy was another attempt at sequelizing Hatchet with 2 separate storylines. The River, which has also been published as Hatchet Return, which makes it sound like a slasher movie. It depicts Brian being asked by the government to actually again live in the woods with only 2 knives so the military can learn from his survival abilities. But he isn't alone. He's actually joined by a government psychologist. But Brian's Winter actually serves as an alternative ending to Hatchet. Paulsen has actually been criticized for the convenience of the ending of Hatchet, and so the novel ends with a line, "It might be interesting to note that had Brian not been rescued when he was, had he been forced to go into hard fall, perhaps winter, it would have been very rough for him." So Brian's Winter was written as if Brian had not actually activated the transmitter when he found the downed plane. And so then you have Brian's Winter, which ignores the river, or rather, the river doesn't fully line up with Winter. Brian's Return shows Brian head back into the wilderness after he struggles to adjust to normal life after returning home. And then, after overwhelming fan requests, Paulsen wrote Brian's Hunt. And in that final novel, Brian realizes he'll never fully integrate back into society. The plot concerns Brian's hunt for a rogue bear that had killed a family of Cree that he befriended in the previous novel. But anyways, back to Hatchet. According to the original Dust Jacket, something you can find in some of the paperback versions, Gary Paulsen wrote that virtually everything that happens to Brian in this book has happened in one form or another to me, just in the process of living. But there are 2 things that I, Gary Paulsen, made himself sit down to do as pure research. First, I ate a raw turtle egg. I also made a fire with a rock and a hatchet. It took me close to 4 hours sitting in the backyard slamming at a rock until finally I got sparks to fall into the fluff bed I had made, as Brian made, and got a fire going. My wife came out and looked down at my small fire. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I made fire," I said proudly, "with a hatchet." Fan letters urged Paulsen to eventually write Guts, of which I have given you an excerpt on Canvas as one of our supplementary readings. You can find that on Canvas to see some of the true stories that inspired Hatchet. Now, one of the things we want to do with Hatchet is actually use it as a way to talk about a lot of the same concepts of Nancy Drew, such as adolescence, gender expectations, privilege. But its writing also allows us to discuss a new critical lens, that of formalism. Now, in addition to any of those critical lenses that we discussed prior to spring break, formalism is an approach to literature that examines the actual construction of the novel. As per NTC's Dictionary of Literary Terms, formal criticism is, quote, an approach to literary criticism that attempts to explain or evaluate the way in which the content of a work is structured or given form. This means looking deeply at some of the more traditional literary modes that would find its way in pre-critical responses, such as genre, point of view, diction, and style, etc. But instead of merely making observations, we're asking how these elements actually provide the unique form that a text takes. Now, this week I want to take a look at a lot of different approaches to formalism. And so in the next video, we're going to start that, breaking down Hatchet at its smallest elements.